This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. It's a Subway to Shea series preview. Mets, San Francisco Giants, still out on the West Coast. And I got my good friend here from the Talkin Mets podcast. That's Talkin Mets with no G. Always love saying that part. Mike Silva. How are you, my friend?
Great. You and I seem to have this LA thing going on, man. If you remember, and I know we brought this up before, and it wasn't in a series preview, but 2 years ago, you came on the Talking Mets podcast. I have them on Sundays, and it was literally an hour after Adonis Medina had a big save. So here I am coming to you, being on your show. Not the same drama today, of course, but Reed Garrett playing the role of Medina on Saturday, Lindor and Pete making a big play, Lindor with the home run, and a fun weekend. So we have this LA thing going on every couple of years, I guess,
Yeah, and I think if I'm correct, I think they had lost the first 2 games of that series, and
Yep.
everything has seemed to have gone into shambles. And then
Sure.
with their 2, I think it was their 2 least of the best pitchers,
Yep.
they ended up winning the final 2 games, and then Adonis Medina closed it out with that final game of the series. This was a little bit different, right? I mean, still a big series, always a big series against the Dodgers, but
Yep.
the Mets, as you said, came out victorious in surprising fashion. I mean, the first 2 games were kind of like a playoff. Those 2 were like playoff games to me almost.
Right.
This last game, obviously, Mets got crushed, but we're going to get into that shortly. We'll recap a little bit of that series and what our takeaways are from it. We'll head into what's going on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday as the Mets take on the San Francisco Giants, and then they'll come home to face the St. Louis Cardinals to start the homestand. We have 21 people in here live right now, right off the top. So do me a favor, give the video a like, subscribe to the Subway to Shea YouTube page, and make sure you're subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, not only to Subway to Shea, but to Talking Mets as well. Shout out to Duran Rivera, my brother from another mother, who's in this chat. We got Carlos Ramos. How's it going, my friend? Always good to speak to you. Douglas Barnes also in here. Junior Swingman as well. And Carlos Ortiz in the room. What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you all for being in here right off the bat. And let's get into this recap right now. Mets, Dodgers. Mets take the series, win 2-1. 5th straight series for the Mets that they've won. They took advantage of this very depleted Dodgers pitching staff outside of, Tyler Glasnow's 8 innings pitched on Sunday. They really took advantage of not only the rotation, but the bullpen as well. The offense showing a lot of fight, showing a lot of grit. Every time the Dodgers would claw back, the Mets would take advantage and do the same thing as well to make sure they kept the lead. And I think that today, Sunday, was the first day that the Dodgers actually had a lead all series long. So it was good to see the Mets come out. Francisco Lindor, alive and well. I mean, we all knew this was coming. So it's great to see him get started. I mentioned this in the series preview for the Dodgers that this is a big series for Lindor, and I think he was going to come out and hitting, and that's what he did. 2022 Starling Marte, is he back? I mean, it feels like it. This is a different Starling Marte than we had last year. He had a big game on Saturday, a 3-run home run. He had 4 RBIs, really big for him. And, Carlos Mendoza, we got to give him a little bit of props there because his moves did not miss this weekend, especially when it comes to the bullpen, which got big outs when it was needed. You had Edwin Diaz in the 8th, Reed Garrett in the 9th on Saturday. The combo worked out, and it's great to see. I think there was a tweet that you retweeted and then I retweeted about Edwin Diaz being that kind of fireman-ish type, reliever where, he can come in at any time whenever the big bats are. And he did just that, and he fared very well. The Dodgers obviously salvaged the final game. They crushed the Mets 10-0, which leaves a question in my mind. Is there a concern for Adrian Hauser, or is there just a bad luck of the draw for him? Because He did get crushed by the Braves, and they have a great lineup. He did get crushed by the Dodgers, but they also have a great lineup. So that maybe there's a little reading in between the lines there. And we'll also talk a little injury updates on Francisco Alvarez, Brett Beatty, and Brooks Raley. Mike, what are your takeaways? Did I miss anything? Is there something from here that you want to hone in on?
I think you hit it all on the head. A tough place to play, LA. I don't think people realize they get the knock was they come out to the ballpark late. Maybe they leave early, but I've talked to players. It is a loud ballpark. It is a passionate fan base. It could be a rowdy fan base, especially on the night game. So going in here, beating the Dodgers, I think as we went in, I said to the audience earlier last week, I said, and I've been talking about it, this is your West Coast is always a test series. This is your first test. Where is this team at? And they came out looking pretty good. I think right now the sum is greater than the parts right now because there is some storm clouds. Too many walks from the staff. They have some of the most walks out of any starting pitching staff in the big leagues. Last year when they did that, they had an awful April in terms of starting rotation. This staff has actually been able to bend but not break. They were overworking the bullpen, but there seems to be a lot of depth there. Reed Garrett has been huge. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Diaz. And I think the role that Diaz is going to play might be going a modern day, closer where you got to go with the best part of the lineup. Great move. I mean, an obvious move really by Carlos Mendoza, because anybody who questioned it, I'm like, well, that's the game there. That's the game. And he goes out, he has a couple of walks. He bounced around the heart of the order, but he got Muncy on that big slider and he got Hernandez on a fastball. And the Mets win. So, you come away 2 out of 3, you move on to San Francisco. Now you really, if you just take one in San Francisco, you have an okay trip, but a 4-2 West Coast trip this early with the injuries they have, with how not so great the starting rotation has been. That's huge. And right now the Mets are on pace for 93 wins. Think about the last time you and I talked, they had just gotten their first win. They were 0-5.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how everybody had prepared doom and gloom, and that they're in a pretty good spot right now.
Well, you mentioned the walks, so let's start with that. Let's start with some of the negatives, right? Adrian Hauser, I think, had 4 walks today. The Mets, just as a pitching staff, Duran Rivera says they average about 4 walks a game, and Junior Swingman comes up with a good point. They need to find the issue that's causing elevated walk rates. How do you solve something like this? Like, what is there to, help lower this walk rate and make these pitchers more efficient?
Well, the good news, and I talked about this on the show that just came out right before I came on with you, is that historically Severino is not a guy that walks a lot of batters. He's less than 3 per 9. Quintana is a guy that doesn't walk a lot of batters, historically less than 3 per 9. Manaya is a guy that doesn't walk a lot of batters, historically less than 3.9. That's ticked up a little bit since he redeveloped as a different pitcher. Buto, we're not quite sure of yet. And Hauser, even Hauser is a guy that I think, and as I bring him up right here, he's a guy that maybe walks a few too many guys. Last year, he wasn't that guy. So everybody's got a history of success in this area. Is it a matter of things just working itself out? Almost like, I don't want to say extended spring training, but they're building themselves up a little bit. We'll see. Is it the type of teams they're facing? Look, it's not that easy to pitch the Dodgers lineup. I mean, maybe they're dancing around those lineups a little bit. Are they focused a little bit on their secondary pitches? I think there's a lot of ways to go about it, but I think the only way you and I as outsiders could solve it is this is not normal for a lot of these guys. And now you have your Severino, Manaya, and Quintana the next 3 days. That's your big 3. That's the guys that are going to, I know the Budos had a good start and Hauser's intriguing, but those are not your big 3. Let's see how they pitch in San Francisco. I don't think the weather's going to be that much of a factor. And away you go. But I'm not ready to say these guys are who you saw right now. I still think, and you posted it the other day, the blueprint is simple, but the only way this team, but complicated, this team needs to get 6 innings, 2 to 3 runs out of their starting rotation. And then once you get into those late innings, I don't care if it's the Dodgers or the Braves or the Yankees, that's a different ball game. It's anyone's ball game when it's 3-2, 3-3. And you're going against middle relief because everybody has a middle reliever that you can hit. And, that's the way it goes.
I feel like the walks as well as innings pitched goes hand in hand. If we can solve this issue with the walks, it limits all the
Sure.
pitches that these guys are throwing, and then we could see them go, a little longer. We got to see Luis Severino finally go 6 innings. He had a low walk rate in that game. Jose Buto's, I think, the only other pitcher. He did it twice in the first 2 games of his season that he was able to go 6 innings each. And obviously those games, his walk rate was low as well. Interesting that you mentioned it did feel like game 1 and game 2, they were kind of skating around the top 3 in the lineup. And maybe that's something that every team should be looking into, because as good as the lineup is entirely, they're really based off of those top 3 batters: Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, and Freddie Freeman. So,
You might want to throw Smith in there too. He's pretty
Will
good.
Smith as well.
I know.
Yes, Will Smith. If you can skate around 1 or 2 of those batters, maybe walk one of them, and we saw, every time that they did that in game 1 and game 2, it came time for Teoscar Hernandez for a big hit. He struck out. I mean, so maybe there
Right.
is something to, kind of skating around pitching these top 3 batters.
But you saw today, that's the underlying storm cloud. There's a lot of positives with this team. None of their big hitters have really got on track yet. Right now, it's been DJ Stewart and Harrison Bader and Starling Marte. That's the best news, as you mentioned, him looking like Starling Marte 2022. Alonso hasn't been great. Lindor, we know what's been going on there. McNeil's just started to come around. Nimmo hasn't been good. None of those guys have gotten on track. And here you are, largely doing it with component players, with a bullpen, specifically a guy, Reed Garrett, who has been huge in bridging innings. And you haven't really got a length out of your starters, and you're 12-9. I mean, that's 93 win pace. That is huge in my opinion. So, as things start to normalize, I think the big hitters will continue to be who they are. I think the starters, unless they're not any good, will get to the 6th inning. But if they don't, if you continue to see the walks, you can continue to see the lack of length, then I'm afraid what you saw today might repeat itself a little bit, because you can't walk 4 or 5 per 9 innings as a starter and expect to dance through whistle past the graveyard. That's what they did on Saturday, and to a certain degree on Friday. Now, Friday, you added the extra component of bad defense. I mean, Wendell did everything in his power to give that game away on Friday. Reed Garrett should have never been in trouble. Their defense hasn't really even been that great. Lindor hasn't been that great. Other than maybe McNeil at times has had some stuff going on there. Beatty's been really good at third. Wendell has not really, other than Harrison Bader, who's really been good in the outfield. Even Nimmo hasn't been that great. So I think there's room for improvement there. Right now they're winning, but the formula is not quite the formula that I think is the recipe for success. But it goes to show you that everybody's playing within themselves. They're contributing, and they're very resilient, as you pointed out earlier. They're not going into games not expecting to win. They're not going into games waiting for the roof to cave in on their head. And if you remember last year, they started 14-7. They started better last year, but it didn't feel like a good 14-7 because the starters were so bad. And
they're only going 3 innings.
Yeah, these guys have been better. They've whistled past the graveyard a little bit, but this feels different. I don't know what. I can't remember. I remember 14-7, and somebody, a fan, emailed me, said this is the worst 14-7 team I've seen. I'm like, yeah, they'll figure it out. So you don't want to just say they'll figure it out, but I think starting in San Francisco, a pitcher's ballpark, you'd like to see that starting pitching formula go to more 6 innings, 2 to 3 runs with a low walk rate, and start to tick up to pitch 100. And here's the ultimate question. Is there analytics that Stearns has, because they never talked about it, that indicate all these guys are not really good north of 90 pitches? And are they going to be less inclined to push them in close games? That's a different scenario. I don't think you have the luxury. You'll burn out your bullpen. I don't think you have that luxury to do that. But it is interesting. Are these guys good for 90 pitches and then less effective pitch 91 through, let's say, 110? I don't think anybody's going to go more than 110 pitches. Let's put it that way.
I think what I've noticed from a lot of these games is that they are very seldomly allowed to go third time through the order. That has been such a big thing. Jose Buto has really been the only guy that they've allowed to do that. with, and he's pretty much succeeded outside of this game where really first game that he struggled since I want to say late June, early July last season, and he's been pretty much a revelation to this Mets staff. It's funny that you mentioned the defense, and the one person we were all worried about during the spring has been our best defender in Brett Baty.
I cannot believe, but I got to tell you, I mean, I was hard on this guy. I was like, there's no way I'm going to let him play the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning of the lead. Last year, if you remember, he made a big error late against the Marlins. He made that big error in Philadelphia on a Sunday afternoon, if you remember, on a ball he should have had. I don't know if it's a combination of maturity, the work he did with Lindor, but and he's not really hitting great. I mean, he's having, like we talked about on the last time you and I were on the show, he's having that Alec Bohm type of, season. 700 OPS, decent defense, some pop here and there. He's been a revelation. I can't believe. And Harrison Bader is a great outfielder. I mean, he's not going to hit the way he's been hitting all year. At least his history says he's not. He's
No,
a great
I saw when I went to the Doc game on Sunday, I saw his defense, and he made a couple of some really good catches that my dad in the stands was wowed over, like how good he can cover the ball, how good he plays defense. Someone who kind of I feel like it's perfect to have him in center field with Marte in right field instead of Nimmo, because Marte's range is not the same as it was, and you saw that today when he tried diving for a catch. But I think
that was a tough play.
It was a tough play, and I think he was just
by
I think he was just hoping, like, you know what, if we get this catch, awesome. If we don't, I think they kind of knew the writing was on the wall, especially with the way
Glasnow was pitching.
Carlos Ramos. Let's switch over to offense real quick. He's asking, and is Starling Marte back to his best? Do you think there's more that we should be seeing from Marte?
Anthony, I know he didn't hit in spring, but even earlier in the homestand when his numbers weren't great, he was hitting the ball hard and he looked more mobile. And if you remember back in the winter when David Stearns went to watch in the Dominican Winter League, he said the same thing. He looks like how he should look. Now, I think there's going to be some load management that's going to have to come into play with Starling Marte. It's a long season. That's why they have Tyrone Taylor, who's been we haven't brought him up, has been really good in his limited time at that point. But from what I see, he looks like the player that he was in 2022. And that is huge to this team. He turned himself into a core star along with Nimmo and Alonso and Lindor and McNeil. They weren't expecting that level. Maybe they were. I wasn't. I remember when he was at Pittsburgh, a lot of fans liked him and suggested trading Nimmo for him back in the day. I was like, nah, Nimmo's an elite offensive player. You don't want Starling Marte, who was a little, if you look at his career, was a little up and down in Pittsburgh. But he had a serious surgery. Probably should have been out the year last year. Shouldn't have tried to play. And what I see, I mean, you and I were talking about, and I even talked about it, a month in, if he's Cano, will they eat the salary? I mean, this is a guy that's every bit, but I do think they're going to need to watch his playing time. And so far, the Mets did that. They did that before Alvarez got hurt. And I suspect they're going to do a little bit of that throughout the summer as well.
I think it helps that the Mets have Tyrone Taylor, who is not only a competent outfielder, but can come up with a big hit here and there. And you can move Starling Marte to either get the day off, get some rest, or just put him as a DH at this moment in time, which has really helped out the Mets with, strategically placing everybody in the lineup. So it's great to see him as well. Another batter we mentioned, Francisco Lindor. It was great to see him. He had the big home run in game 1 of the series. He had a couple of big hits in game 2, a couple RBIs. Is it finally time now for Francisco Lindor? He definitely felt like he needed this West Coast trip, although the fan base was great for him during that homestand. I mean, I was there for it all. They really showed out for him. And I think that kind of, even though he didn't play well, that, homestand, I think it kind of carried over mentally for him to do what he did against LA.
If you remember Lindor throughout his time with the Mets, he is a streak player. He has and this was a pretty bad valley, but he has peaks and valleys. And when the Mets played their best in 2022 is when Pete Alonso and Lindor were on their game, like in July and August of that year. I think the fan support is great. I know I had some debate on Twitter about that. I actually talked about this. My first trip to Citi Field was this past Monday, and I hadn't been there. I didn't go. I mean, truth be told, I didn't go to Citi Field last year. Doing what I do, I don't need to be at the ballpark. I mean, that's the way I feel. I don't need to be at the ballpark to do what I do. And as the June swoon came into play, and when I start to go when the weather gets warm, I just reallocated my dollars to something else. I was like, look, they're going to wind up ripping the team apart. What's the point? But when I went to Citi Field and I saw how the 18 to 20,000 of the small, intimate crowd, how positive it was, and they were supporting Lindor, that's what the team needs. Not blindly, Pollyannishly supporting players, but a guy who's putting the effort in, who definitely he knows he's struggling. He doesn't want to not hit. You want to debate his switch hitting and not hitting left-handed. That's a different conversation. But he's putting the time, he's putting the effort. He's an elite defensive player. He has not been himself on either side of the ball. It's almost like he needed it. And we talked about this when it came on your show the first week. It's almost like they weren't ready for the season. The only thing I could question is did the lack of playing time in the spring, the load management, contribute to a slow start? I don't know. That's another story, irrelevant at this point. But he looks like the player that we all know and love. And if you look at his splits from last year, he had a couple of 700 OPS months, and he had some 850 to 900 OPS months. And I think you're going to start to see him come around. And I think the fan support is awesome. And, like I said on the show, if anyone who listens to today, I watched the Knicks game yesterday, and I saw how the Knicks got down and how the Garden was, it gets quiet, but it's not like tension cutting like a knife. There's no booing. There's no toxicity. That's a home court advantage. That's a home field advantage. And you reserve the booing for effort and unacceptable levels. You should boo? Joey Wendell, who made those 2 errors. That deserves, hey, God, get your head out of your new what. Those are unacceptable,
Yeah.
and not that'll change it because he knows he screwed up. You could tell watching it. That's deserving of a boo, not a guy that is out there trying to find his way.
But then to go with Lindor, the type of leader that Lindor is, went on during the press conference and said, we had to pick Joey Wendell back up. And,
There you
it
go.
happened there.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
maybe that's a turning point, not only for Lindor, but for Wendell. I think that the homestand not only helped Lindor, but the entire team. I think they felt it. And that's how they
Sure.
went on that run. They swept the Pirates. They took 2 out of 3 now from the Dodgers. So I think that they're feeling good. I think finally they're feeling comfortable. Like you said, when we first came on, it felt like they were still in spring training. And now it
Yep.
feels totally different. It feels like Mendy is comfortable. And speaking of Carlos Mendoza, because Patty here comes up with a good point, if I could bring this up. So the Los Angeles Dodgers, he wasn't supposed to pitch today. It was supposed to be James Paxton. He was listed originally as the pitcher to go up against Hauser. But they use Glass now, I guess, to try to salvage this series. And he goes 8 innings. It was a poor decision by the manager to bump him up to start today and go the 7 innings. Dodgers need to him because the pitching has holes, which is true. Their rotation is kind of like our rotation last year right now. So that should be a concern that the Dodgers should be working out for. But when I mentioned Carlos Mendoza, I sent out a tweet earlier today after the loss and saying, really the only bright spot of this game is the fact that they did not blow through the bullpen. They let Adrian Hauser take his lumps. They went to Grant Hartwig, who they just brought back up, and then they pitched Talkin for 2 innings. The rest of the bullpen, and we'll get to one of the injuries of the bullpen, probably why they didn't go too crazy today, but the rest of the bullpen, I guess the heart and soul of those guys, right? The Jorge Lopez's, the Drew Smiths, obviously Edwin Diaz, they did not use him today. And I think Mendy played this well. This is, I always say, you play to win today's game, right? Before you start thinking about tomorrow and the rest of the week. Today's game was out of reach, and that's when you start thinking about tomorrow. And I think Mendy kind of handled that correctly.
Yeah, and I think the best part about Mendoza is that after we talked about his first week with the bunting, if you remember that, and everything that happened during that doubleheader where people were going crazy about Brett Beatty bunting, we haven't really talked about Mendoza. And that's good, because when you're not talking about the manager, that's a good thing. Now, there was a nice article at The Athletic, I think it was Will Salmon or Tim Britton, talking about Mendoza and early on his communication style and how he helped DJ Stewart through some anxiety about his position on the team early in the season. He's growing into the position. I think the fans like some of the fire. I think I noticed that the fans really got fired up when he came out of the dugout for the balk against the Pirates. And he's a type A personality. You watch him, he may not come across that way in press conferences. That's a guy who has energy. I know guys who have energy. I could spot it watching them. Buck Showalter was different. He was that calming, authoritarian, old school Bear Bryant type guy, I would say. He wasn't, and even though he's a disciple of Billy Martin, he wasn't that spitfire that Billy Martin was. Mendoza's got a different, and I'm not saying he's better or worse. I know I've seen some people say, well, this is why Buck was a bad manager. It's just different. They're different personalities. But I think you see a guy who has a good feel. And I think early on, you knew once they got down 2-0 and then 3-0, even 5-0, you weren't beating Glasnow. The Dodgers weren't going to let you come waltz in and sweep them. I mean, statistically, it's very hard to sweep any team in baseball. You just want to go and continue to take 2 out of 3. So, yeah, the fact that we're not talking about Mendoza means he's doing a good job. That's the way it usually works in this town.
Well, yeah, and Buck, I thought year one handled the media very well. Year two was just the whole year was just odd to begin with, but he wasn't the same Buck he was during the first year. I remember, having to, obviously we both had to deal with, all of us in this chat, dealing with Mickey Callaway and Luis Rojas. Very uncomfortable feeling, very uncomfortable looking, some weird comments made. Buck kind of changed the pace of that. As soon as I started hearing Carlos Mendoza speak during spring training, I don't know. I just felt good about it. I felt good about the way he handled the media, the way he talked, the way he was very candid, up front. Everybody from him to David Stearns, they pretty much have been upfront about everything. There is no reading between the lines, none of that.
They talk. They don't lie to you. That's what annoys people. They have not lied to us, and I think you're seeing the synchrony between Mendoza and Stearns. We didn't realize how off kilter both Buck and Billy Epler were last year, and stuff has come out. I think Buck intimated to some of that now. I think those guys are completely on the same page. I think one of the things that Mendoza is going to be tasked with is like what you said today. When do if you're going to have 5 or 6 inning starters, you're going to have to manage that bullpen. You have your A team, you have your B team, then you have some combination thereof. But the game that you had down 3-4, 5-0, do you wave the white flag without it being embarrassing? And I think that's what they did today. That's why you got Talkin to begin with. I mean, everyone goes, well, what do you have Talkin on this team today? That's what he was there for today. That's why you have Talkin. Now, whether he survives, I don't know what the deal is. The optionable arms. I think Hartwig's the one that's going to go up and down. Remember, you can only option guys 5 times now. It's not like the old, a couple of years ago where you go up and down, up and down. And with Rayleigh out, that's a big blow to the A team because he was looking really good. But it looks like it's just a minor inflammation, same situation from last year. No structural damage. They really right now, I mean, as much as it's a blow to lose Alvarez, who wasn't really hitting, but he was playing well behind the plate, they really can't afford to lose bullpen right now. They have JD Martinez coming back on Friday. They'll be able to survive 6 to 8 weeks with Alvarez. Stinks, but they'll be able to survive because they have a veteran, potentially elite hitter in JD Martinez coming. But losing from the bullpen, especially the A team, that's going to be tough. And, that could be detrimental if that continues.
Before I close out with the Mendoza stuff, I posted Carlos Ortiz says Mendoza's a straight shooter, so is Stearns. And Patty says, I'm thrilled Mendoza was chosen New York City manager over the guy from the Brewers. And a lot of fans were like, I don't want Carlos Mendoza because he's coming from the Yankees. Yeah. That might be the biggest important piece, is that he is coming from the Yankees because he knows how to handle New York City. Yeah. He's in the dugout with Aaron Boone, who a lot of people don't like, but if we want to be a consistent playoff team, he's done that. So
he's been there a while. And I'll tell you, I've had this vision, and I've wanted it to be so many different guys. I wanted Mickey Callaway to be the guy. I wanted Luis Rojas to be that guy. Back in the day before they hired Terry Collins, I wanted Wally Backman to be that guy. I was always a big Wally Backman supporter. I wanted the Mets to hire a fresh, youngish manager that can take over this team and be there for 7, 8, 9 years. or more. Kind of like how Ron Gardenhire came in with Minnesota and was that guy for a long time. Former Met there, Ron Gardenhire. And look, 3 weeks in the season, I'm not about to say Mendoza's that guy because things could go awry, but this is probably the best intro to a manager that the Mets have had, taking Buck out of the equation, who was a veteran who came in and everything kind of just was up and running in 2022. Because even Mickey Callaway, who got off to an 11-1 start, I think, didn't he have like the lineup card issue or the batting out of order pretty quick into the season?
Mhm.
And Louis Rojas, I think, unfortunately was just thrown into the mix in an unfortunate situation because of Beltran. But if this turns out by luck, where everything kind of worked out its way, Mendoza might be that guy. Way too soon to say that, but I'm excited too, because Craig Counsell would have been more of like Buck, an experienced manager here with big money, 4 or 5 years. Who the heck knows how that would have worked out? And you weren't going to fire him because you owed him so much money.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You talked about Alvarez, so let's get into some of these injuries. Obviously, Francisco Alvarez is out for the next 6 to 8 weeks. You did a good comparison with Dow Strawberry missing in, I think it was 84.
May 11th, he hurt his thumb. He came back on June 28th. I mean, figure it's not quite the same, but Alvarez late June, July 1st.
Yeah, actually, same injury that Brett Beatty had in 2022. So,
Right.
I'm pretty sure they're talking to each other about
Sure,
the recovery
sure.
time and all that stuff. I think it affects obviously Francisco Alvarez more because he's
Yep.
got to catch, he's got to be able
Sure.
to grip. So those are going to be
Sure.
issues that he's going to have to get over. But we got Tomas Nido. We have Omar Narvaez. That the first thing I said was to bring up Tomas Nido, and I don't know if you said you were okay with the tandem being them. I think I am, especially if JD Martinez comes and provides that bat.
This is what you had in 2022. It's just the same version. Instead of McCann, you got Narvaez and you have Nido, who I've always loved his catch and throw. I mean, he was hitting in AAA. I know he's not the offensive player anybody wants. He actually came up when he first came up. He was known a little bit for his bat. I think he won a batting title when he was in the minor leagues, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe he's worked on hitting. Look, all you need him is to be a competent at bat. This offense, now you have some issues if Bader goes into the tank like he has in the past, and then Nido, you have a couple of real soft spots of the lineup. But then you look at 1 through 7, it's all pretty good. Marte's back, let's assume. Nimmo's Nimmo, Alonso, JD Martinez, McNeil.
And those two haven't really hit their stride.
Yeah, you want to say maybe Beatty is a soft spot and you have a third of the lineup that's soft. Well, guess what, guys? I saw soft parts of the Dodgers lineup this weekend. All right. So every team has their ebbs and their flows. Look at the Yankees lineup. There's some soft spots in that lineup too. You need your elite players to be elite and your component players to do the job, whether it's their glove first guy or just have quality at bats, move the runner along. Baseball's not, ever since, LeBron James and the big three, everybody wants, a stacked team. It's not how sports works. That's not usually how it works out that way. It's about component players playing within themselves. And look at every team that's won a championship. Just want to go back 20 years, go back 20 years. They have guys up and down the lineup that are component players that don't have sexy stats, but were really valuable members of their championship club or their playoff bound club.
Brett Beatty, we talked about. It's great to see him back in the lineup. He missed a couple of games there with the hamstring, but he's back. He came back halfway through game 2 and then played all of game 3. Brooks Raley, right before the final game of the series, we found out that he had inflammation in his elbow, and he's going to miss 2 weeks. Tim Healy of, I think it's Newsday, had mentioned that Brooks Raley suffered the same exact injury last season around this time and missed 2 weeks. So maybe it's just a yearly thing for Brooks. Good thing is there was no structural damage. That was mentioned, I think, by Anthony DiComo right after the game was over. So that's great news. At the very least, you're going to have Jake Diekman kind of be the only lefty right now. I would hope at some point that Nate Lavender would make an appearance and maybe
Dedniel Nunez, I think, is an interesting name to look at. He was up briefly. He's got some. I probably botched his name. That's a tough one. Dednial Nunez.
Yeah.
He's got to get a nickname. I can't go with that one, man. Look at him, Lavender. I know he's been a high rate of walks, but was very impressive in spring training. The Mets. I think I keep going back to what I said in the earlier. I think Reed Garrett's a big part of this. I mean, I don't see something unsustainable so far. I spoke to a scout last night. I was texting with him. He says, "Well, let's see the change splitter, how he's working off how the league adjusts. The league will adjust. They'll try to figure it out." He's kind of a revelation, but his location, especially yesterday against the Dodger lineup, was really, really good, and it'll be interesting to see. But I think he's going to be key to mitigating some of that. And he's moving himself into higher leverage situations. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't get much more higher leverage than 6-4 at Dodger Stadium in the 9th inning on the road. I mean, come on.
Look, I know it was not the heart of the lineup, which Edwin Diaz, weaved around and took care of. But the fact that in that high pressure situation, after what happened the night before, which wasn't even his fault, but that could affect, mentally, that could affect you at some point. He unwavered and he strikes out the side. So very impressive from Reed Garrett. Another guy, Lane Kerner mentions this in the chat about Sean Reed Foley. He's supposedly ready to come up soon.
Yeah.
Which is where I think
I
Michael
like
Conklin
him.
might get switched out for Sean
Yeah,
Reed Foley.
and I
They're the
like
same.
yeah, and because Reed Foley doesn't have options, so you have to really, I think, leave an optionable spot in that bullpen, and that's with a Hartwig optionable. Like unfortunately, Tonkin's going to have to, his poor family, they're going to be living out of his suitcase all this year. Who knows where he goes at this point? But I've always liked Sean Reed Foley. He's always had injury problems. He looked really good early in 2021. Zach Scott was actually talking about that deal on his podcast about Winchowski. Like there was some good arms they got for Mats. We just didn't realize it. It's a shame they didn't hold on to the Rule 5 pick. Slayton, who's having a time of it in Boston. That would have been interesting, right? On the whole thing. But I think Sean Reed Foley is a guy that could be a very useful arm if he stays healthy. Another guy that walks away too many batters. But hey, look, baseball 2024, I think that's kind of like what the sport is all about. And, you just got to live with it and work through it.
Lane Kerner also mentions, what's the news on David Peterson and Kodai Senga? I think Senga is starting to ramp up a little more.
Peterson thinks he'll be back at the end of May, which will be interesting how he fits into this. Does Hauser become a swingman?
I think you make it a 6-man rotation.
When Senga's in there, like this is a good problem to have. So Senga comes back. Now you got 6 starters with Hauser. Peterson comes back. That's 7 starters. So where do you go? How does that? And then you got guys you got to send down. Initially Reed Garrett was the guy who was going to be on the shuttle. Well, we'll see where he's at in a month. But guys striking out 17 per 9. It's nice to finally have the Mets find a scrap heap guy that just comes out of nowhere like the Dodgers do and the Yankees do and the Rays do. And all of a sudden I've been begging for this. Give me one. Maybe I finally got my one. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of positives about the Mets right now. You have, not everybody hitting on all cylinders and they're winning. You have pitching help on the way. You've got some depth in the bullpen. It's a long season. Here's my message to Mets fans. Focus on yourself. Don't worry about the Phillies. Don't worry about the Braves. Don't worry about the wild card standings. It's a math problem. If the Mets win 11 out of every 20, they will win 89 games. I'm pretty sure 89 games, unless it's one of those wild years where it's a top-heavy league, will get you into a playoff spot. And then at that point, it's a tournament, and we'll see what happens. That's it. 11-9 is not like great, by the way. Do the math. Every 20 games, 11-9 is about, 88, 89 wins?
Yeah, I'll take that.
They're a little bit ahead of that right now.
I said at the beginning of the, spring training, actually, no, not beginning of spring. I said once we got JD Martinez, I said around 84 to 87 wins, I thought that this team could manage. And I still think that that's possible. Lane Kerner also mentioned about David Peterson. I think he's getting ready to start a program soon, but I don't think he's going to be ready until July-ish. So I think
I read something over the weekend that says he thought he'd be back by the end of May, but we'll see.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I think you're going to have some good problems on your hands. I think come June 1st, it'll be more crystallized about where those guys are. And look, if Adrian Hauser stinks, then he becomes Michael Talkin. That's what he can become. And that's okay, too. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what you may be looking at in about another 4 to 6 weeks.
I want to shout out everybody that's watching this. We got 160 people eyes on this
Wow.
show right
Someone's
now.
looking at my mug. 160 people are spending Sunday night looking at my mug. Shouldn't you be watching HBO or, Game of Thrones? Is Game of Thrones even on anymore? I don't know.
Mike, I know you like to keep it audio style, but we got to see the face that makes that
I had to
Talking Mets
actually
no
comb my
G.
hair. I had to comb my hair. I had to make sure I had an appropriate shirt on. And I'm sure, somebody will make a comment about, my lighting or and that's okay.
Yeah,
This
we
is all
get to
fun.
enjoy that room of goodies right behind you.
That's
So
right. I put a lot. This is during the pandemic. I decided to invest some stimulus money and put it back into the economy and go on eBay. And I was blessed enough where I didn't have to, I didn't lose my job like some other people. But I decided to say, if I ever do go do some audio, that's what I got. I got my Knicks stuff here, and you could probably see a little bit of Knicks behind me to the, it's above my right shoulder. So yeah, you got a pretty good setup too, as though the devil stuff might bother somebody.
yeah, I know, especially now that it's a very Rangers and Islanders centric
That is
playoffs.
true.
But
That is true.
I do have to support, my Devils here in Jersey. And like I said, 162 people in here. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to Subway to Shea. Make sure you subscribe to Talking Mets as well. Hello to Jeff Cohen, who's in the house from Baseball and Barbecue. Appreciate you tuning in, my friend. And, I always call this the series preview, but I spend most of the time recapping and talking about, the storylines from the games of the week. But let's get into this preview right now. I have the pitching probables that have, I think, just went official on Mets.com. Sean Manaea in game 1 will be going up against, wait a minute. No, this is a mistake. Yes, this is a mistake. So the first name should be Jose Quintana. I have Jose Quintana's picture there. I just didn't write his name. So that's a mistake on my end. But Jose Quintana is taking on Keaton Winn. Then you have in game 2, Luis Severino will be going up against Logan Webb. And in game 3 is really Sean Manaea going up against Blake Snell. Which of these matchups, I always ask this of every guest that comes on, which matchup is the most intriguing to you?
Oh, this is a tough one because I'm really curious about seeing Blake Snell after the whole off season and how awful he
Rough
started.
start so far.
Rough start, but I think the best is I really think Luis Severino has the opportunity to stand out. I mean, he's the guy who has the top of the rotation, resume and pedigree. I know it's been a while. You're going against one of their best in Logan Webb. I think that's a really good matchup. I think that's kind of like the matchup that's neutralized. I think the Mets have a good shot in the other two. But if you want to talk about the matchup that could be a flip of the coin, where I think it's not so much a Mets advantage, that would be the middle game of the series with Severino. And I really like to see Severino continue his ascent. And this is not that the Giants are a great lineup, but it's a tough place to play. San Francisco is a sleepy ballpark. No matter how good or bad the Giants are, it always seems to be a tough place for the Mets to play. Going all the way back to the late 90s, if you remember, Anthony, those Mets teams with Piazza and Ventura, outside of the postseason in 2000, they always struggled. At that time, it was called Pac Bell Park.
Oh, yeah.
It was always a house of horrors for the Mets. Not quite Atlanta house of horrors, but it was a real pain in there. What to go there.
That was a big concern going into the 2000 playoffs.
postseason. Yeah, I think they got swept in a 4-game series there that year, if I'm not mistaken. I remember. So
and they barely skated away in game 2.
Oh, yeah.
After, I think it was JT Snow tied the game against Benitez.
You talk about sweaty ball games like we've had in LA the last couple of nights, and the Knicks and what happened on Saturday with how they grinded out that win. That San Francisco series, that game too, might be one of the best all-time postseason games I watched on TV. Fortuitous call with John Franco against Barry Bonds. And, this is this ballpark. The point is, this is a tough ballpark. No matter how bad the Giants have been, it's always a place where you go in and you're going to be, it's like the if you're an NBA fan, it's like an 85-80 game back from the 90s. It's like kind of that grudge match or whatever you want to call it. And you remember JD Martinez didn't sign with the Giants because he was concerned about this ballpark, what it would do for his ability to produce numbers that wouldn't push him out of the game because of his age. So goes to show you that it's going to be a tough game, and it'd probably be a pitcher centric 3 days.
Well, JD Martinez definitely doesn't have to worry about it this season because he won't be going there. He'll probably be activated this
He
weekend.
purposely got his back to be hurt so he didn't have to go play in San Francisco and open up at Citi Field. When he finds out Citi Field sometimes ain't much better, but he'll have to learn that the hard way, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you. I think the Logan Webb, Luis Severino game, I think that, Logan Webb's their best pitcher. I think Luis Severino could possibly be our best pitcher. I mean, I don't know about you, but I really did want Luis Severino at the start of the offseason. I thought if you were going to talk about a reclamation project to sign on here, I think that he was the best one to take, considering just like Mendy, he was on the Yankees and, he's proven. I mean, like, how many times did we hear in that last decade about how DeGrom matched up with Luis Severino? Many times.
I mean,
So
they
many times.
compared him at one point to Pedro
Yeah.
Martinez. I remember that. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, that's a little bit much. But yeah, I mean, he's been bad. He's been hurt. But if you look 2 years ago, before he got hurt in 19 starts, he was 7-3 with a 3.18 ERA for the Yankees, 124 ERA plus, and very similar walk to strikeout numbers, 2.6 walks, 9.9 strikeouts. Now, his walks are a tick higher. That's why I think, and they were high last year a little bit with the Yankees too. I think there's a potential for that to improve. There's one guy on this staff that could become that, dare I say, go into the seventh inning. Maybe that's Severino. I don't think that's Quintana. I'm not sure Manaya. Sometimes he's not that economical with his pitches, and we don't know what Budo is yet. So, and Hauser's a back end guy. So to me, that would be the guy and that's why I'd like to see that start and see him continue to ascend to that level. Look, he's pitching for his baseball life, and you'd be surprised when guys do that, what they can produce in those seasons where they're pretty much. They know that if they don't start turning around soon, the big money days are over. He might have a big money day. He puts a big year up. He's at least going to get $15 million a year, because Kyle Gibson and guys like that get $50 million a year. He'll get $50 million a year for 2 or 3 or 4 years if he puts up big numbers.
That was my big thing with the rotation coming into this season, is that not only Luis Severino, but Manaya as well, Adrian Hauser, Quintana, they're all fighting for their next contracts, and it would behoove them to pitch very well and make the most of this season as well. At the beginning of this road trip, I said 3-3. Give me 3-3. Let's get out of the West Coast, and we'll be good. If they can, and the most I thought of them winning the series was this series coming up. I said 2 out of 3 from the Giants. I'll take. You give me the 1 in the Dodgers, but somehow they, were able to take the 2 out of 3, the 3 from the Dodgers, especially that Manaya game, because, looking at all the stats, Manaya has not pitched very well against the Dodgers and that lineup, and somehow, was able to skate through and have the Mets steal a victory there. And then obviously they won on Saturday as well. But if they can take 2 out of 3, go 4-2 on this road trip, especially in the West Coast, these 2 big teams, it's always a struggle, whether it's the Dodgers, whether it's the Giants. You can even throw Colorado. I feel like Colorado's always tough to play in for the Mets.
Yeah. I mean, remember back, and I sound like an old fart now, but do you realize the last time the Mets swept the Dodgers, as they were attempted to do today, was 1989. Back then, when you went on a West Coast trip, you did L.A., San Diego, San Francisco. Usually was a 9 or 10 game trip. Brutal West Coast trips. They usually did them in May, and then you did them again in August, because it would be NL East, NL West, back to the East. Then you would play the West, a little bit of East late July, and then the West in August, and then it would just be your division in September. So these are not terrible in 6 games. Imagine if you had to go to San Diego on top of it. So they've broken them up a little bit, which makes it better. But yeah, I mean, all these places: Arizona, San Diego, Colorado, LA, because of who they are. Even when they're not good, LA is a tough place to play. And like I said, San Francisco, because of the fact that it's this sleepy ballpark right off the water and depresses offenses, and the Giants just seem to always play pretty well at home, no matter how good they are. And they're a solid team. And even though they've got off this slow start, I think if you look at the National League, there's not, other than the Braves and the Dodgers, and I'm not sure that those teams are as good as they think they are. They're good, but I don't know if they're as good as they think they are. Everybody else is kind of in the muck. And like I said at the beginning, Anthony, if you could get this to the seventh inning with the game within a run or tied, it's anybody's ball game. I don't care if you're playing the Rockies, who are horrible, or the Braves were the best. You're in that, anything can happen. One string of the bat puts you ahead, and now you got the bullpen in control, and you got Mets have some really good late game options that make them very formidable.
Even my friend Matt Ibi Ibanez from Till Mets Do Us Part was talking, whenever I think of the Rockies and the Mets, I think of 2011 when Tulowitzki came in and they swept us and he made City look like a small ballpark. Yeah, Colorado has always been one of those teams that, has drive me nuts for sure. Whether we play in Colorado or we play, them at Citi Field, they've always been one of those tough teams. Even when they've been terrible, they've always given the Mets fits.
See, to me, the Colorado now is more normalized since the humidor. In the 90s, it was crazy. I mean, there was no lead that was safe. I remember a game the Mets get up 7-0 in the first inning, and no matter what, you're like, it's just not enough. It's not enough. Sure enough, the Rockies come back. Mets would have to win late. When you went into Colorado and you won a game, it was kind of like that Dodger game yesterday. Like, it was back and forth, and you had to sweat it out. And I mean, of course, they had really good hitters, but cores enhanced everything. Now it's not quite the same, but it's another ballpark. It's a spacious outfield, and the ball flies, and anything can happen. So when you have I think ultimately what you've seen in sports, whether it be the NHL, the NFL, Major League Baseball, I think these leagues want more parity. They don't want dominant dynasty teams unless you earned it. And I think that's what's good for the sport, because that gives the most engagement and the most entertainment. And I think you're seeing there's a lot of parity in the National League outside of Colorado and Miami. I mean, everybody else is, even the Pirates, who are historically bad. I didn't think that was a bad team that came to Citi Field. They had some good bullpen arms. They had some good starting pitching. Their offense,
They had some Mets moments, though.
Yeah, there's
That's
some
the thing they
offenses
had.
like, offense is so. But again, Mets had to win a couple of games late off of them, and they did.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Look, when it comes to talking about the Dodgers and the Braves, honestly, I really don't even care about the regular season anymore. We know that they're going to make it to the postseason. It's now what they do in the postseason. And I think that's getting to their heads as well, because outside of that 2020 season for the Dodgers, and even that can be taken with a grain of salt because it was only the 60 game season, that they have not been the, playoff model of consistency. They've struggled a lot outside of I guess maybe the cheating scandal with the Astros, where they lost that World Series. And then you look at the Braves, who won in 2021. That was a pretty fair, World Series that they won themselves. But they've also had a lot of playoff, struggles, and that's going to be their thing. That regular season, they'll breeze through. I feel like. I don't know this year about the Dodgers until they get that pitching staff handled. But the Braves, and I guess they don't have Strider, but I feel like the Braves always find someone to pluck in, and then they become next Strider.
I will say that I think that the Braves series kind of jolted the Mets. The takeaway I have from the Braves and the Dodgers, they're really good teams and they're tough teams. But this ain't the 96 Bulls. And I think they're beatable. Now, in a short series, we'll talk about that later on. And the regular season's not the postseason, because things don't always line up that's in their favor. You could get favorable matchups. But they're not as good as everybody thinks. They have depth issues like everybody else. And the one thing people forget when they, get gaga about teams and free agency in the offseason, this isn't the NFL. One player doesn't swing things. This isn't the NBA. You can't do what LeBron James did in Miami. You need to have a team, 1 to really 40 to 45. All it takes is the lack of pitching depth, and all of a sudden it don't matter. You have Betts and Ohtani and Freeman. And by the way, Betts doesn't really look good at shortstop. I mean, I give him credit. Guy plays all over the field. He's a great athlete. He's a great player. But I didn't think I saw a great shortstop right now, to tell you the truth. So, I'm not taking anything away from them, but I think there's a lot of power in the league, and I think the Mets are better than everybody gives them credit for. And I think they're the biggest positive takeaway I could say is that they're 12-9, and they have not hit on any cylinder at all. at any point within the components of their team, and that's usually the way the game works. But really, they're underdeveloped in starting pitching. On offense, they haven't hit their stride, and they're averaging 5.1 runs per game coming into today. And the rain thing has been the bullpen, but now that's taken a hit with some injuries. So we'll see. But that's a good place to be when you're on a 93 win pace and you haven't really hit your stride in many facets of your team.
Like I said, for this series, this road trip, like I mentioned before, I would have been happy with 3-3. I think I'm a little selfish, wanting to get 2 out of 3 in this series.
Just keep winning series. Keep winning series. That's what you want to do.
Quintana, who's the model of consistency. If he can deliver like he usually does every time he comes out, I think that'll be great. If we get another Luis Severino start, which I think will kind of solidify him, that will be great. And as well as Manaya needs to bounce back from the last 2 starts where he got roughed up. So I really want to see this team take 2 out of 3 from here. I might be a little disappointed if they only come up with 1.
I agree with that. I'd like them to continue to play well. I think they got the starting what you want to see is these are the big 3 top of the rotation. You want to see them pitch well, and you want to see them be the anchors that you need them to be. You could forgive Hauser and Budo. Those were not really good matchups for the Mets when you really think about it. But you really need to see these 3 guys, and I would be disappointed if they didn't win 2 out of 3. But I would not sneeze at a 3-3 road trip. So I'm kind of hedging my bets here. But I think continue to push, continue to play well, and I'm going to be focused. I will say this: if they do lose 2 out of 3, I'd like to see how they did it. How what happened. What was the situation, and was it a matter of getting beat, or was it a matter of them playing poorly? That remains to be seen.
Well, as we round out this show, I got a couple of players to watch from both sides of the game. Jorge Soler, 333 batting average, 2 RBIs, and only 6 at-bats against Jose Quintana. But I put Jorge Soler up here because I think throughout this entire series, he's going to be someone to focus on, especially against the starters. He hits pretty well against them. I don't know how that translates into playing in San Francisco. We talked about how big the ballpark is and how that is. So I don't know how that translates, but he's one of those guys that I would watch out for. He was one of the guys I originally wanted to be DH, not for the deal he wanted, but I definitely was someone that I was looking into before we, I guess made the right deal with JD Martinez.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of ex-Mets too to watch there. I mean, Horace Soler was nearly a Met. You got Wilmer Flores. You've got
He's
Michael
my other
Cook.
one. Let me bring him
You
up.
got Wilmer Flores. Yep. I mean, that's a guy that always will be special in Mets fans' hearts. The Giants are sneaky on offense. You don't think that they're good, but you got guys like Thairo Estrada, really solid player on offense. Lamont Wade Jr., really solid. Patrick Bailey, the catcher, having a great start to the year. And I think he was pretty good against the Mets last year too, if I remember a little bit. But yeah, I think Flores and Conforto for me are guys that I'm curious to see now that Conforto is a year past shoulder surgery.
Yep.
What version of Conforto will you see this week?
Wilmer Flores always has a special place in my heart. I thought he was a good Met. Always was a clutch hitter. He bats very well against Sean Manaea, so that's something to watch out for in Game 3. When it comes to the Mets, players to watch, we talked about Starling Marte. He's one of them. 11 at-bats against Logan Webb. Watch out for him in Game 2. 364 batting average. He has a 728 OPS. And then you look at Pete Alonso, who's kind of been I don't know. He's having a weird season to me. Like I know he's got the power numbers up there, but he is having a little bit of a weird, quiet season to start off the year. But against Blake Snell, very big, 333 batting average, 1.244 OPS. He's got 2 homers, 2 RBIs, and 15 at bats. That's definitely a guy in Game 3. If Pete can get himself going, especially before he comes home for the homestand, that's something that I think is needed. But I don't. Isn't this like it just feels? It doesn't feel very Pete. I mean, he had that great play in Game 2.
He hasn't been. No, he hasn't been himself all year.
He's been really good. Defensively,
he hasn't.
He's been very good.
He hasn't got on track. I know he's got the home runs. He hasn't got on track. I like how he's starting to go the other way and dump singles and driving runs like that. I think that is necessary. He hasn't gotten on track. The Mets have streaky hitters. Lindor and Pete are streaky hitters. They get really hot. And it would be nice against the lefty and a fellow Boris client to get hot against Blake Snell on. I think that's an afternoon game there, the final game of the series.
Well, the last time I saw Blake Snell in person was game 2 of the wild card series, where they pretty much worked him out of the game early. And I think
You got to do.
Pete and Lindor hit a home run. And the thing that just drive me a little bit nuts is the Mets always struggle against lefties. And this guy's already 0-3. He's got an over 11 ERA.
He's due for a good outing. Yeah,
he's due for a good outing. The Mets are always that team that provides that. It's like, hey, you need to get back.
Well, his peripherals are not as bad. I think his FIP is 4.68. That's who he is. That's why I didn't want to give him a big contract. Yeah. That's who he is. He's a 4.50 ERA. Yeah, he's going to have some big seasons where he could put up big strikeout numbers. He's a Cy Young player in 5 inning stints. Let's put it that way, or 4 to 5 inning stints. So to me, that's not a Cy Young Award guy, but that's a whole nother story for another show.
Yeah, we're coming up on an hour of show. Before I let you go, before we wrap this whole thing up, the City Connect jerseys came out on Friday. I don't have the picture of them here, but I kind of wanted to know your thoughts on them. When I initially saw them, when they did the little, I guess, what do you call it? The teaser, or I don't know. Before they revealed them, someone had leaked them. That's the word I was looking for. Leaked. When they were leaked, I was like, okay. With the hat, it had the token NY. But now looking at the whole jersey, I got to say, I kind of like it. Hearing the story behind them, too, when they did it with the video and they show you all about it, I kind of like them.
Look, I'm a traditionalist. I like traditional jerseys, but I also understand that jerseys are a big business. And I think the Knicks have had a City Connect jersey all year that's kind of like orange and a dark, I don't know if it's black or it's like dark blue, but they wear it a lot. It's kind of been, it's there. And I think what I would say is this, at least if they make this consistent, I don't know if they're going to change it every year. You're right. There's some connections to New York. They had an awful one a few years ago. I think it was 2019 or 2021. It was like all pale white and goofy. And I was like, ugh, on that whole thing. Wear it once a week. I was not a big black jersey fan. So to me, if this is going to be in lieu of the black jersey, remember that Blackout Fridays? That last year, that.
And we haven't seen the new ones yet either. They kind of replaced the original.
Now they're going to do what the NBA does. They're going to have 52 different jerseys. Here's what I just ask. Make sure the number's legible and there's a name on the back so I know who's there. That's it. Remember, there was one year the Mets went the Yankee route, 1999, when they didn't have names on the back. Go back and look at that. That gets tough when there's no names on the back, when you don't know the player. The only team that's allowed to do that is the Yankees right now.
And an interesting note for the Yankees is that whenever you buy a Yankee jersey, it has the names on the back.
Well, yeah. I thought, unless somebody decides to open up a business and say, I will not allow people to stitch names on the back, you're going to see that. And that is funny because fans wear Yankee jerseys with names on the back so that they could identify with somebody. So
yeah, you mentioned that Knicks jersey, and I was like, I actually kind of like that one. The black.
They're not
one?
bad. Yeah, they're not bad. I think they like orange, but I don't know if they're gonna wear it. I think I heard that they may wear it during the playoffs. I mean, look, I like the traditional home whites, and I like the traditional road. I like that with the Mets as well. But that's not the business of sports now, and I get it. And younger fans who are in that 18 to 34 demo want choice. They want different jerseys. They want to identify with something that's theirs. And if that's what makes them happy, out of all the things that to get annoyed about in sports and with the Mets and baseball, this ain't the thing to get annoyed about. It's not bad. I'm not jumping for joy over it. It looks a little Colorado Rockies-ish, but okay. I'll take it. And I know people said the Yankees. Last I looked, Bridges in New York City and boroughs are not property of the Yankees.
Right. And the Yankees aren't doing one either. So.
And I think traditionally they probably shouldn't. I mean, that's an iconic jersey that they have over there. But
yeah, I know Will Salmon. Oh, was it Will Salmon? I think it was Tim Britton of The Athletic had mentioned that those are going to be used most Saturdays, except for Darryl Strawberry's retirement number.
They'll probably maybe do an 80. Maybe they'll do an 8. No, maybe not do an 86 one. Maybe the pinstripe to 86 one. I don't know.
I think they'll just do pinstripes because they haven't really brought out the 86 jerseys in a while. They didn't do it for Doc, so I don't think they're going to do it. I think they have to get this in like before the season begins with how many jerseys that they can circulate and go through.
Yep.
I don't know, but I think I'm a fan of these. I did get mine. I did put in an order for mine to come in soon.
There
So
you go. You're the demo. I did not
I
order.
am.
My wife actually asked me, "Do you want to wear a jersey when you go to the game?" And I'm like, I have them in my storage. I haven't worn them in so many years, and I'm just thinking, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm at a point. I'm 47. Do I not want to? Like, I don't know. Maybe I should crack it out. Maybe I have a Wright jersey. I have Piazza. I have Beltron. I have Hernandez and a Carter ones. I just haven't kicked them out in a while. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for me to loosen up. Yes, I'm an adult. Yes, I do independent media. Yes, I like to be a
It's
professional
okay to have
fan.
fun. You can
It's
have
okay to
fun.
have fun. Let my hair down at that point. By the way, I don't know if you know, I'm going to be going to Tampa to watch the Mets that Friday and Saturday game. I will be in the building watching them play Tampa. So I'll be one
Maybe
of
we'll
like
see you on
12 people.
video.
If I don't make it on TV in that ballpark with 12 people going there, I'm never going to get on TV. So I will make sure if I get on TV that I give a shout out to as many people as possible. But who knows? They got a chance to see me this tonight, and this brought back my blog talk radio days, Anthony. Because if you remember when podcasting started in 2007, you would have a chat room and you would be live. There was no pre-recorded back then. You had to be live, and people would be in the chat room and ask questions, and you'd be on. The quality is so much better now than it was back then. But this brought back the time machine, so it's been a lot of fun. I see that someone says you're dropping a mortgage payment on a City Connect jersey. Well, when I went to the ball game on Monday, I spent $140. I got for parking, a hot dog, a pretzel, and 2 beers. So that's not a mortgage payment, but that's a pretty good
No,
price.
it is.
You
And you
know,
know the thing is too now, like
mm,
you're not really paying for the Mets jersey anymore. You're paying for Nike.
true.
Like that's what you're
Yeah,
paying for because I went
absolutely.
on opening weekend. I went to the stores and I'm like, a T-shirt with a name on the back is $50. Like,
Mm,
yeah,
that's a lot
I
of
remember
money.
those used to be
And
like
that thing,
30,
yeah, and that thing
$35.
shrinks, and that thing will shrink in the dryer, and then it's done at that point.
And
So you have to wait.
I'll buy like those type of T-shirt jerseys for the players
Yeah.
nowadays, but for jerseys, I don't buy anyone that's
Mm.
currently playing. I do
You
only
wait.
legends.
You
Yeah, I
wait.
wait.
You
Yeah,
don't want you're not gonna have a Harrison Bader jersey
no,
on. You
no,
may
no,
not
no.
have,
I almost got
Starling
tempted.
Marte.
I almost got tempted with Alvarez for this City Connect jersey, but I went with
Let's
the
just
plain
wait.
one, no names
Before
on
we
it.
give out 10-year contracts to Alvarez
Yeah,
and put their jersey on the back, let's make sure he's gonna be around a little bit and productive.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
think he
Of
will.
course.
I think he will. I'm not anti-Alvarez. I know everybody's mad at me for Beatty. You're not allowed to root for Beatty. Well, I was right. Beatty was bad, but he put the work in and he did the right thing, and now he's on the right side of the Mike Silva curve. So you put the work in and you do the right thing and you get better. You'd be surprised what you could achieve.
Look, I got 3 Piazza jerseys. I got a David Wright. I have everyone from I have the quartet from the '86 team, and that's where I leave it at. No, I don't do
There you go.
any of the guys from nowadays because never.
That's right.
Same thing with hockey too. I can't. Hockey's even worse. If you get a
Oh, I
player
got
name
Knicks
on it, forget it.
jerseys from the 90s, like the original when jerseys came out. I guarantee you they don't fit me anymore. I gotta tell you, and I'm not in bad shape, but I looked at an Anthony Mason jersey. I'm like, ooh, that sounds like that's 16-year-old Mike Silva. I don't know if I could fit in that one at that point. Got to get it framed, but we'll see. I actually had a Jason Isringhausen jersey made up when Generation K came out. He wound up signing for me when he was still at the Mets in 1999, and I now have it framed. You can't see it; it's down here, but I have it framed now. So that one I won't wear because he signed it. So he signed that. Haven't watched it or worn it since that day. It was the day after the Matt Franco game that I was at the ballpark, and he happened to be in the outfield. They got him signed. So it tells you how long ago it is. We're going on 25 years ago. So that's been not washed for 25 years and been signed, and now it's framed in a shadow box right next to me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And
Mhm.
Isringhausen, Isringhausen was a good Met, right? I mean, obviously he had the great
Yeah, had some
start.
moments.
He
Had some
had his
moments.
moments, and then he came back kind of full circle towards the end of
Mhm.
his got his, I think it was his 300th career save with the Mets
Yep.
and ended his career on that note. So that's a good autograph to have there. Mike, look, man, I appreciate you coming on here.
Anytime, man. This is great. I love it.
Yeah, we're gonna do more of these. I'm glad you enjoyed this and enjoyed the format. A little different from my podcast, a little
There
different.
you go.
Although we do record it video wise, but like this is
Sure.
I like this live,
Yeah.
format with the chat. Look, we had 182
That's
people in here watching.
tremendous. Nobody does appointment television for HBO, much less us. So I'll take it. I'm humbled. I appreciate even that one guy who said he won't listen because I'm the guest. If you're listening, I still love you. Okay, I still love you. I'm not that bad of a guy. If you saw me at the ballpark and we were having a beer together, if you're of legal age, of course, I'm a pretty fun guy to hang out with. And Twitter's not real. Okay, there's a lot of context, but thanks for having me on, man. This is a blast. I always enjoy what you guys
I'll have to
do.
catch up with you at a game someday. I know you don't go to many
Absolutely.
games, but we'll definitely have to
I
catch
might
up at
start
some
going
point.
a little bit more and get out there a little bit more. So we'll see. But absolutely, man. We'll have a Subway to Shea Talking Mets dual hangout because people are going to be more likely to hang out with you than with me, apparently, after reading that. So I can't do a Talking Mets hangout because I won't get anybody to show up. It'll be me and it'll be like me sitting at the VFW hall waiting for someone to show up. It'll be funny. But yeah, we got to get something like that going on. Maybe if anybody wants to thank you, Matt. Great pot on fan behavior. Thank you. I appreciate that. Maybe we get something like that going. That'd be pretty cool. We get like a little group together. It might not be the 7 line, but we'll have a nice little intimate gathering.
Yeah, of course. So. Look,
I'll sign some autographs.
Yeah. Don't sell yourself short here. Look, 182 people came to see this face for the first time because you're always on audio.
That.
So
I'm always on audio. I got a couple of videos for the Substack subscribers, but yeah, I'm doing more video, and this has been a blast, man.
Yeah, shout out to you. Shout out to the 183 people in here. Make sure you're subscribing to the Talkin' Mets podcast. That's Talkin' Mets with no G, my favorite part ever to say. Mike Silva, make sure you're following on Twitter. And now it's finally on Twitter. It's Talkin' Mets no G.
Yep, I wound up getting rid of the Mike Silva media. So everything, Instagram, Twitter, I put some nice thoughts on Instagram. So if you follow me at Talkin' Mets no G on Instagram, you'll get some good stuff. So thanks for everybody
like
for
this video, everybody. This will be out as soon as this is over. This is if you missed any part of it, you can watch it immediately. So make sure you check it out on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube page. This will be up, for the time being. You guys can check it out even up until tomorrow night's game. Watch it even into the other parts of the series because we talked about, a lot of the games and a lot of the pitchers and hitters that are going to be a part of it. Make sure you check it all out. And I just want to thank everyone again and thank my great guest here, Mike Silva Media, good friend, not only to me, but to the Subway to Shea podcast. Everyone have a good night. And always remember, let's go Mets.